Ethan Ross lived a quiet life in a small apartment on the edge of the city. He was a university student, studying computer engineering, and spent most nights in front of his computer. He liked silence, warm tea, and the soft humming of the streetlights outside. But that night was different. It began with a strange sound. Ethan had just put his cup of tea on the desk when he heard it, a low, steady worry sound, like a machine warming up. It wasn't coming from his computer or the hallway. It was coming from the window. He turned his head slowly. A faint blue light was glowing behind the curtain. It wasn't like the yellow light of the street lamps. This one pulsed, like a heartbeat. His stomach tightened as a cold shiver ran down his back. This can't be real. He whispered to himself. The light grew brighter. The worry became a high, soft vibration that made the glass tremble. Ethan stood from his chair and took a small step toward the window. The floor creaked under his bare feet. Suddenly, the curtain moved as if pulled by wind, but the window was closed. A thin line of light appeared in the air, cutting across the glass. Then it widened. The world outside seemed to twist. It's like a reflection on moving water. Ethan gasped. Someone stepped through the light. She wasn't human, at least not fully. The figure wore a smooth silver suit that looked more like skin than fabric. Her tall, lean body moved with grace, like she belonged in that glowing doorway. Her skin shimmered softly, almost reflecting the blue light around her. She had large silver eyes that flickered as if they contained tiny stars. Ethan froze in shock. The figure stumbled slightly as her foot touched the carpet. She looked around the room, confused. Wait, she muttered in a strange accent. Wrong coordinates. This is not the station. Ethan couldn't breathe. He thought, for a crazy second, that it might be a prank, some kind of projection or costume. But then the light behind her started to close like a sliding door, and the blue glow faded away. Now she was inside his room, and the worry stopped. Silence filled the space. Only their breathing broke it. She looked at him. He looked at her. Ethan's hands moved without thinking. He grabbed the only thing nearby, a frying pan that he used to make midnight noodles. He held it up like a shield. The woman blinked, tilting her head. Her long silver hair shimmered as she moved. She raised her hands slowly, palms facing him, like she wanted to show she wasn't a threat. Human, she said softly. The word not perfect, but understandable. Mistake. Ethan's voice cracked. Who? Who are you? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for a small device on her wrist, a band that wrapped around like a second layer of skin. A holographic display appeared in the air, full of glowing symbols and numbers that Ethan couldn't read. His heart raced. This wasn't a dream. This was real. The woman spoke into the device in a language he didn't understand. It was musical, but fast, like wind passing through metal. Then she pressed something, and a mechanical beep filled the room. The hologram blinked red. She frowned. Beacon. Broken, she said slowly, struggling with the human words. Wrong place? Wrong place? Ethan repeated in disbelief. This is my room. The woman looked around again. Her expression softened a little, but there was still tension in her body. Like a soldier lost behind enemy lines. Ethan's mind screamed at him to run. Call someone. Do something. But another part of him, the part that built gadgets from old junk and dreamed about space when he was a kid, kept him standing there. Are you? Alien, he asked carefully. She looked at him with those silver eyes. She didn't nod, but the answer was clear. The silence returned for a moment, heavy and strange. Then the woman suddenly stumbled. Ethan noticed that her breathing was uneven. She leaned against his desk, her hand trembling slightly. Her suit had a faint cut near the shoulder, and tiny sparks of blue light flickered from it like leaking energy. You're hurt, Ethan said without thinking. She frowned. No, danger, she whispered, then fell to her knees. Ethan dropped the frying pan and rushed toward her. He hesitated for a second. She was alien. For heaven's sake, but something inside him couldn't watch anyone collapse like that. He reached out slowly, the moment his hand touched her arm. He felt a soft hum under her skin, like the vibration of a machine. Her body was warm, not cold. Her breathing was fast. Hey, stay with me," he said. She looked up at him, confused, like she didn't expect kindness. Ethan carefully helped her sit against the wall. He grabbed a blanket from his bed and wrapped it around her shoulders. Her suit shimmered under the fabric, making the blanket glow faintly. "What is your name?" he asked. She opened her mouth, then hesitated. "Zyra," she finally said. The name rolled off her tongue like a breeze. "Okay, Zyra," Ethan said, trying to stay calm. "I'm Ethan. You're safe here, I mean. Kind of safe." She tilted her head at the word safe, clearly still learning. But she didn't look afraid anymore. Lost, her device flickered weakly again. She pressed a button, and a small image appeared in the air, a map with star-like points. Ethan stared at it, eyes wide. "That's space," he whispered. Zyra nodded slowly. "Home," she said softly, pointing to a cluster of bright lights. "This," she pointed to a small dot at the edge. "Mistake." Ethan couldn't help but laugh nervously. "Yeah, big mistake. The situation wasn't funny." Zyra's beacon, whatever it was broken. She didn't know how to get back. She was stranded in a human student's messy apartment. And worse, someone might come looking for her. Ethan had read enough science fiction to know that aliens didn't just wander alone. "Is someone coming?" he asked carefully. Zyra nodded, then shook her head, then frowned as if the language didn't fit what she wanted to say. "Drone. Search. But time, okay. So someone will come. But not right now," Ethan said, trying to piece it together. She nodded slowly. Ethan ran a hand through his messy hair. This was insane. A real alien was in his room. His hands were shaking, but a strange calm started to settle in. He had always wanted something exciting to happen in his life, though maybe not this exciting. Zyra looked at him again. Her silver eyes weren't cold. They were sharp, intelligent, but there was something vulnerable behind them. She seemed to study him like a scientist looks at an unknown creature. "Why?" "Help," she asked softly. Ethan shrugged. "Because you're hurt, and I'm not a monster." She stared for a moment, then let out a soft sound, a small, surprised laugh. It was the first time he'd heard her voice like that. "Human." "Strange," she whispered. "You have no idea," Ethan muttered with a grin. Minutes passed. The glowing symbols on her wrists slowly faded as the device ran low on power. Zyra leaned back against the wall, breathing more evenly now. Ethan handed her a bottle of water. She stared at it, confused. "It's water," he explained. "You drink it." She tapped the bottle, then carefully lifted it to her lips. The way she sipped was awkward, like she'd only ever read about humans in a book. She coughed once, then gave a small nod of approval. "Good," she said. Ethan smiled. "Yeah, Earth water. 5 stars." Outside, a soft wind rustled the trees. Everything looked the same as always. But for Ethan, nothing was the same anymore. He sat on the floor next to Zyra, still clutching the frying pan just in case. She seemed calmer now. Her breathing matched his. Their worlds were completely different, yet for a moment, they shared the same silence. Zyra touched the window glass, staring out at the night sky. "Your world," she said softly. "Yeah," Ethan said. "Not much, but it's home." She didn't answer. But the way she looked at the stars told him she came from a place far beyond anything he could imagine. Ethan wanted to ask her 1,000 questions. About space, about her people, about how she got here. But she looked tired. Whatever happened before she arrived had drained her. "Rest," he said gently. "We'll figure it out tomorrow." She tilted her head again at the word rest, but she seemed to understand the tone. She leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. The soft blue glow around her dimmed a little. Like a machine entering sleep mode, Ethan watched her for a long time, his mind spinning. A few hours ago, his biggest problem was a coding project due next week. Now there was an alien woman sleeping against his wall. He whispered to himself, "No one's going to believe this." But deep down, He wasn't afraid anymore. Something inside him, something he didn't even know existed, was awake now at around 3 a.m. As Ethan finally lay on his bed, Zyra's device gave a soft ping. A red symbol blinked on the hologram for a moment before fading away. Ethan didn't understand it, but Zyra's hand twitched in her sleep, as if sensing something. Far above Earth, in the cold darkness of space, something shifted. A faint signal traveled between the stars. She wasn't alone, and Ethan's ordinary life had just ended. The next morning, Ethan woke up feeling like he had dreamed everything. The soft sunlight entered through the window, and for a second, he thought he was back in his normal, boring life. But then he turned his head and saw her. Swire, she was still sitting on the floor, wrapped in his blanket, her back resting against the wall. The soft blue glow of her wrist device flickered faintly like a sleeping heartbeat. Her breathing was calm. Her hair shimmered in the light like strands of silver. Ethan sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. This is real, he thought. An alien woman was really in his room. He didn't know whether to panic or make breakfast. Ethan stood up quietly and went to the kitchen. He didn't want to wake her up too soon. His brain was still trying to understand everything. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stared at the dark liquid, as if it might give him answers. What am I supposed to do? He whispered to himself. Call someone? The government? A UFO hotline? But he shook his head. If he told anyone, they might take her away. And something about Zyra made him feel protective. She wasn't dangerous. She was lost. When he returned to the room, Zyra was awake. She was standing near the window, looking at the city below. Her silver eyes scanned everything, the cars, the buildings, the rising sun. It was like she was seeing a new world for the first time. Morning, Ethan said softly. Zyra turned her head slowly. Morning, she repeated, testing the word like it was a new tool. You learn fast, he said with a small smile. She tilted her head, not fully understanding the joke, but she seemed calmer than last night. Ethan brought her a piece of bread. She stared at it with suspicion. It's food, he explained. You eat it. She took it carefully, sniffed it, and then bit it. Her expression didn't change, but she gave a slow nod. Good, she said simply. Ethan laughed. I guess Earth bread is universal. She didn't laugh, but her eyes softened. After they ate, Zyra tapped her wrist device. A small hologram appeared in the air again, a map full of glowing dots. One dot blinked red. She pointed at it. Beacon, she said. Broken. Ethan stepped closer. He didn't understand alien technology, but he knew machines, and broken machines could be fixed. Can you repair it? He asked. Zyra frowned. Need. Energy? Power. Ethan thought for a second. Like electricity. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Ethan's brain clicked into problem-solving mode. He was good with wires and tools. He had built strange gadgets for fun. Now he had a reason to do it for real. Okay, he said. I'll get you power. Ethan led Zyra to the corner of the room where his old gaming computer sat. It wasn't fancy, but it had plenty of power. He pulled out cables, adapters, and some spare wires from a messy drawer. Zyra watched him closely, curious about everything he touched. He pointed at the wall socket. This gives power. She crouched down to study it. Primitive, she murmured, almost amused. Yeah, well, Ethan said with a grin. Welcome to Earth. They worked together. Zyra removed a small, glowing crystal from her device. It looked like a tiny blue star trapped in glass. She explained in broken English that it was a power core and it needed a charge. Ethan carefully connected wires from the core to his power supply. Sparks flickered. His heart jumped, but Zyra remained calm, adjusting a control on her wrist. The lights in his room dimmed slightly as the device began to absorb energy. Zyra's eyes glowed brighter. The hologram map turned from red to orange. Good, she said softly. Ethan exhaled. You're welcome. Hours passed, like minutes. Ethan asked her questions whenever he could. Where are you from? She pointed to a cluster of stars on the hologram. Zyre, she said. My world, why are you here? Mission, she answered. Observe hidden. No. Contact. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Well, that plan didn't go very well. She didn't understand the humor, but she nodded. Beacon wrong. I fall here, and now. She looked at him. Serious. Need go? Before? Others come. Ethan didn't like the way she said others. Her voice had a shadow in it. In the afternoon, Zyra's beacon device was glowing stronger. She pressed a few buttons, and a calm, robotic voice spoke in her language. She listened carefully, then frowned. What is it? Ethan asked. She took a deep breath. Drone coming, she said slowly. To find me? Good thing? Ethan asked. She shook her head. Maybe not only drone. Signal open. Others here. Ethan's stomach tightened. Others. Hunters? She whispered. Ethan didn't know who these hunters were. But the way she said it made the air feel colder. As the sun set, they worked on securing the beacon. Zyra explained in simple words that if the hunters came, they might detect Earth. If they did, the planet would not be safe. Ethan paced the room. Okay, so we have a problem. We need to hide your signal. Maybe I can. Jam it, jam. She repeated. Block it. Make it look like nothing is here. She tilted her head, then nodded. Good idea. Ethan felt a spark of pride. He wasn't a soldier or a scientist, just a student who liked tech. But right now, he was the only one who could help. He connected his laptop to her beacon. Through a crude adapter he built using an old router and wires. Zyra watched with growing interest. You build fast, she said softly. He smiled. Humans are good at making things out of nothing. The plan was simple. Mask Zyra's signal by flooding it with random data. The hunters, whoever they were, would get confused. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. As they worked, Ethan noticed Zyra's face soften. She wasn't just a soldier or explorer. She was someone far from home, relying on a stranger. You trust me? Ethan asked. Zyra hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, you. Strange. But good strange, Ethan laughed quietly. I'll take that as a compliment. When night returned, the beacon beeped softly. Zyra stiffened. Drone, she whispered. Close. Ethan rushed to the window. A faint light blinked in the sky like a star moving too fast. They're here, he said. Zyra pressed a few buttons. Her device projected a shield around them, a transparent dome of soft blue energy that shimmered like water. Protection, she said. Ethan's mouth fell open. That's amazing. Zyra didn't smile. Her eyes were locked on the sky. Drone must not see Earth, she said. Minutes later, a silver shape entered the sky. It looked like a small ship, no bigger than a car, but it moved with silent grace. It hovered above the building, scanning with a green beam. Ethan's heart pounded. The beam passed over the window, and for a second, the blue shield flickered. Zyra clenched her jaw and adjusted her wristband. The shield held. Come on, Ethan muttered under his breath. Finally, the green beam turned away. The drone moved slowly to the west. Zyra exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. It didn't see us. Ethan let out a shaky laugh. That was close. But it wasn't over. Zyra tapped her wrist again and frowned. Problem, she said. Signal open to long hunters? Maybe here hunters? Ethan repeated. She looked at him, her eyes serious. Bad, not like me. They take, destroy. Ethan felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just some accident anymore. Earth could be in danger. He sat down on the floor, running his fingers through his hair. Okay, so what do we do? Zyra crouched in front of him. We fight, she said simply. He stared at her. Fight me? You smart, she said softly. You help. I protect. Together. The words surprised him. Ethan was no hero. He was just a guy who liked technology and late-night tea. But when he looked at Zyra, he saw someone who trusted him. He nodded slowly. Okay. Together. They spent the next hour preparing. Zyra showed him how to activate a small energy barrier that could hide signals for a short time. Ethan worked on strengthening it with Earth's power lines. He felt like a kid playing with something way above his level, but it worked. As they worked side by side, their movements started to match. Zyra handed him tools without words. Ethan adjusted wires without being asked. They didn't need perfect language to understand each other anymore. At one point, Zyra paused and looked at him. "You not scared?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm terrified, but I guess that doesn't matter." She blinked as if processing his strange human bravery. "Strange human," she whispered. "Yeah," Ethan said, grinning. "But useful." Outside, the city was quiet. People were sleeping, unaware that something from the stars was hovering above them. Ethan felt like he was living in the middle of a secret war no one else could see. Suddenly, the beacon flashed red. Zyra's eyes widened. "They come," she whispered. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Hunters." Zyra nodded. "Very close." Ethan rushed to the window again. Far in the distance, 3 dark shapes moved against the night sky. They didn't shine like the drone. They absorbed light, like shadows with wings. "Those don't look friendly," he whispered. Zyra's hand tightened on her wristband. "They are not." For the first time, Ethan felt the full weight of what was happening. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't a joke. The wrong signal had brought something dangerous to Earth, but instead of fear, something stronger filled his chest, a spark of determination. He wasn't just going to watch. He turned to Zyra. "We're not going to let them find us." Yes, together. The hunters' ships were getting closer. Zyra activated the shield again. Ethan powered the signal jammer. The lights in his room flickered, and his computer fans roared. The air felt charged. Like a storm about to break, Zyra took a step forward. Standing between him and the window, her silver eyes glowing brighter than ever. "They think human world weak," she said quietly. "But maybe they wrong." Ethan stood next to her. "Yeah, let's prove it." The night outside was quiet, but Ethan's heart was pounding like a drum. The hunters were close now, closer than ever. Through the window, he could see the dark shapes in the sky, moving silently like shadows. There were 3 of them, long and sharp. Cutting through the air without a sound, Zyra stood next to him, her silver eyes fixed on the approaching ships. The blue light from her device painted her face in a soft glow. She didn't look scared. She looked ready. "Hunters come," she said softly. "No time." Ethan swallowed hard. "How strong are they?" Zyra's lips tightened. "Stronger than drone? More danger, but not impossible." Ethan nodded, even though fear twisted in his chest. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a fighter, but he wasn't alone anymore. The hunter's ship stopped in the sky above the neighborhood. A low hum filled the air, deep and heavy like a storm. The lights in Ethan's apartment flickered. Zyra raised her hand and touched the wall. Her wristband glowed brighter, expanding the invisible shield around the building. "Hide signal," she said quickly. "They scan." Ethan ran to his laptop and checked the jammer he'd built. The little green light blinked fast. It was working for now. But he knew the hunters were smarter than the drone. They wouldn't give up easily. The ground shook slightly as one of the ships lowered. A beam of white light spread across the street, scanning every corner. Cars, trees, walls, everything lit up under its glow. It passed over Ethan's building but didn't stop. "Good," Zyra whispered. "They not see." Ethan exhaled slowly. But the relief lasted only a few seconds. One of the hunter ships changed direction. Its sharp nose turned directly toward their building. A second later, the hum grew louder. "They find something," Zyra said, her voice steady but firm. "They found us," Ethan said. The ship hovered closer. A small object dropped from its underside, a black sphere that floated toward the window like a silent wasp. It stopped in the air, just meters away. Then a soft red light blinked on its surface. "What is that?" Ethan asked, stepping back. "Scanner probe," Zyra said. "They test shield. If find weak, they break." Ethan's stomach twisted. Can we stop it? Zyra's fingers danced across her device. The shield around the apartment shimmered brighter. The probe's red light flashed faster. For a few long seconds, nothing happened. Then the probe turned away and floated back to the ship. They think no one here, Zyra said, but they not leave. They wait. Ethan's mind raced. How long can your shield last? She looked at her device. Hours, maybe less. Power low. He glanced at the power cables running from his computer to her beacon. I can give more power. But if I do, my system might burn. Zyra met his eyes. Then we must finish before that. Finish. Ethan repeated. She nodded. We fight. Ethan laughed nervously. You keep saying that like I know how. You learn fast, she said simply. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Zyra crouched on the floor and pulled a small metallic piece from the side of her suit. It unfolded into something like a silver spear with glowing blue lines running down its length. She pressed a switch, and it emitted a faint hum. Weapon, she explained. But not enough for 3. Ethan raised his eyebrows. Yeah, I don't have a space gun lying around. She looked around his room, scanning everything, the wires, tools, his old drone, and broken gadgets in the corner. Then she pointed. We make what? Ethan asked. Trap, she said. For the next hour, they worked together in silence, but with a shared fire in their eyes. Ethan's room turned into a small battlefield of cables, wires, and improvised technology. Zyra guided him, showing how to connect her alien tech with human electronics. Ethan used his old drone, kitchen magnets, metal pipes, to create something that looked insane but worked in theory. Signal lure, Zyra said, pointing to the device. They think beacon inside. They follow, and then boom. Ethan asked. She tilted her head. Boom it means. Surprise? Zyra smiled faintly. Yes, surprise. The trap was simple, but risky. They would move the false beacon signal to the rooftop of the next building. When the hunters went to investigate, Zyra would overload their scanning systems. Ethan would use his jammer to cut their communication link. If it worked, they would force the hunters to retreat. If it failed, well, they didn't talk about that part. At exactly midnight, the hunters moved again. One ship hovered lower, releasing another probe. Zyra activated the fake beacon. Instantly, the probe changed direction and shot toward the rooftop. The hunters followed. Ethan and Zyra moved quietly up the stairs of the building. The night air was cold, and the sky was filled with the silent shapes of the ships. Ethan's hands were shaking, but Zyra's movements were smooth, focused. She was built for this. You ready? She whispered. No, Ethan whispered back. But let's do it anyway. They reached the rooftop. Ethan set the signal jammer near the air vent, while Zyra climbed onto a higher platform, holding her spear tightly. The hunters' ships were almost overhead now. One of them lowered until Ethan could see the smooth, black surface shining under the moonlight. Zyra gave him a small nod. Ethan pressed the button on his jammer. A wave of static filled the air, invisible but strong. The probe froze in midair, blinking rapidly. Now, Zyra said. She leaped forward, her spear glowing bright blue. She threw it like lightning. It struck the probe, shattering it into a burst of white light. At the same time, Ethan's jammer overloaded the hunter's signal for a few seconds. The ships reacted fast. Too fast. A loud hum filled the air as one of the hunters released a shockwave. The rooftop shook. Ethan almost fell, but Zyra grabbed his arm and pulled him up. The ships circled like predators that had found their prey. They know. Ethan shouted over the noise. Then we fight, Zyra said again, her eyes burning bright. She jumped to the edge of the roof, pressed her wristband, and released a flash of blue energy. It exploded outward like a wave, hitting the nearest ship. The hunter's ship jerked backward, its lights flickering. Ethan ran to the jammer and pushed it to maximum. His laptop screamed as wires overheated, but the jamming pulse grew stronger. The hunters' communication broke apart, their formation scattering for a moment. Good, Ethan, Zyra shouted. They weak. Ethan laughed breathlessly. You're welcome. But the second ship dove down fast. A bright red beam shot from its side, hitting the roof just meters away. The shock threw Ethan off balance. He slid across the rooftop, stopping just short of the edge. His hands gripped the concrete. "Ethan," Zyra called, her voice sharp. She leapt down, grabbed his arm, and pulled him back to safety. "Thanks," he breathed. She gave him a quick, almost human smile. "We need finish." Zyra climbed back up and raised her spear again. But this time the hunters changed tactics. One ship stayed in the air while the other two spread out, surrounding them. Ethan could feel the pressure in the air, like the calm before a thunderstorm. He closed his eyes for a second. He thought of his normal life, his quiet room, his tea, his boring nights. That world was gone now. A new one had taken its place, and he didn't want to run from it. He opened his eyes. "Zira," he called. "Let's end this." Ethan rushed back to his jammer. He rewired 2 cables quickly, connecting it directly to Zyra's beacon. The power surge almost burned his fingers, but the machine came alive with a sharp electric hum. "What you do?" Zyra asked. "Something crazy," Ethan said with a grin. "Human style." The jammer and beacon merged, creating a powerful pulse. The hunters' ships reacted immediately. Their lights flashed, their movements faltered. The pulse was too strong to ignore. "Now." Ethan shouted. Zyra jumped high, higher than any human could, and landed on the edge of the nearest ship. Her spear pierced its surface. The ship shuddered. She pressed a button on her wrist, and a burst of energy exploded inside. The hunter ship lost control, spinning away into the clouds. The second ship turned its weapons on her, but Ethan was faster. He slammed his hand on the laptop and released another pulse. The signal cut through the air, jamming the ship's targeting. Its beam missed Zyra by inches. Zyra leapt back to the rooftop like a silver comet. "2 left," she said. "Then let's make it 0, Ethan said. Out of breath but grinning, the third ship fired another shockwave. This time Ethan didn't fall. He braced himself and held his ground. Zyra used the distraction to charge forward. She threw her spear again. It struck the second ship dead center. The ship cracked open in a burst of blue light and fell toward the sea beyond the city. The last ship hovered alone. It turned slowly, as if deciding whether to fight or flee. Zyra stood tall on the rooftop, her hair flowing in the wind, spear glowing bright. Ethan stood beside her, wires in hand ready. For a moment, the night held its breath. Then the last hunter ship turned and shot back into the sky, disappearing like a shadow into the stars. Silence returned. The hum was gone. The shield around the building faded slowly. Ethan dropped to his knees, exhausted but laughing. Zyra lowered her spear and exhaled. "They gone," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "We did it." She looked at him, her silver eyes shining in the moonlight. "We," she repeated. Together, an hour later, back in his room, Zyra repaired her beacon fully. The portal, the glowing blue light he had seen on the first night, opened again. It shimmered like a doorway to the stars. Zyra stood in front of it, holding her spear. She turned to Ethan one last time. "You helped me," she said. "Saved your world."